there are 6 days that God is involved in the affairs of the world. It's happening every week. And on the 7th day, Hashem rests from those affairs. And there's a higher, no longer is Hashem on the level of going down, involved in those affairs, but rather his connection to the world is on a higher level. This is what happens every week. You have 6 days, Sunday through Friday, are days that Hashem connects to the world. He goes on and he's involved in the world in a way that he is doing, that he's involved in the world affairs. Just like in the beginning of creation, there were 6 days that God created. So too, there's the idea that he is still giving energy to the world in a way of in the way that he was involved during the 6 days of creation. Comes the day of Shabbos, Hashem's involvement in the world is like he was involved in the world the 7th day of creation in a way that he is resting. So what does this mean that Hashem is resting? What does this mean to the world that Hashem rests on this day? So the idea is that on this day, the 7th day, Hashem rests from giving energy to the world in a way that he has to go down. He has to use the lower level of godliness to give energy to the world. Rather, there's a higher level there's the level that Hashem is just on a way of rest. That's the level of godliness that comes into the world. So I want to share a story to bring out this point. There was a Jew, the Rogatchover. The Rogatchover was a great Torah scholar. When he was a student, a young man, he was learning the Talmud. And the Rogatchover, when he would learn the Talmud, he would be able to understand every part of the Talmud. And with ease, everything he understood. He was a bright student, and he excelled in his Talmudic studies. One day, he came to the part of Talmud that talks about what happens if a Jew gets lost in the desert and he loses his sense of what day it is. He doesn't know, is today Sunday, Monday, what day of the week it is, Shabbos. So the law is that you should start counting from the day that you lose count 6 days, and on the 7th day, celebrate Shabbos. So this student, the Rogatchover, couldn't understand how there could be such a case. How could it be that someone doesn't realize it's Shabbos, that he has to count 6 days, and then on this, then the 7th day Shabbos, to have this idea of Shabbos by him? The Rogatchover couldn't understand. He said, when Shabbos comes, a person realizes it's Shabbos. How does a person realize it's Shabbos? The Rogatchover said, you look up in the sky, and the sky looks different. So, of course, not all of us, I can speak for myself, we don't see the sky different when it comes Shabbos. But the point is that Shabbos, there comes a different energy in the world. We might not realize it, and we might not realize it, and it takes and different ways we might not realize it. And it's not something that you see that you'll see, but that's what happens on Shabbos. There comes something changes. The way the world runs changes, and this is also true in another interesting story I heard, that a Jew's, the way a Jew is changes. The second Lubavitcher Rebbe, Chabad Rebbe, heard from scientists that scientists said they took the pulse of different Jews during the week and the pulse of a Jew on Shabbos, and it was different on Shabbos. So you see how something changes on Shabbos. All right, let's start now inside the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Chapter 72, the first halacha, the first subsection. Subsection 1. I'll read in Hebrew and then I'll translate.
Rabbi, are you, what is the Simon that you're in? Is it Simon 72?
Yes, Simon 72. Yeah.
Okay. I've got the volume. All right.
This Simon is the Hebrew word for chapter. This chapter speaks.
Which volume? I'm sorry.
This is volume. The volume. It should be. I'm not. Volume 2. If you have the.
I have volume 2, and what?
And what page on volume 2?
2.
I should just mention that there are numerous prints of the summary of Jewish law, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. So some of you have the print that Rabbi Lifshitz has, and others have a different print. So it's going to be a different page, but the chapters are all the same. So this is chapter 72. So whatever print you have, look for chapter 72, not for the page number, unless you have the same print.
It's chapter 72.
Yeah. Chapter
And
72.
this summary book, the summary of translated and by Rabbi Yoel Tauger. It'll be volume 2, page 2, but it's different. There are different summary books. Summary of the Shulchan Aruch.
Okay, here you are.
Okay.
All right, let's go. So this chapter speaks about the great holiness of Shabbos, the equation of Shabbos to idolatry, and the preparations of Shabbos. Halacha 1, subsection 1. Shabbos Kodesh hi ha'os hagadol v'abris shenasan lanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu ladas ki b'sheshtos yamim asa Hashem es hashamayim v'es ha'aretz v'chol asher b'hem. So the Holy Shabbos is a sign, and it's a great sign and covenant that God gave us to teach us that in 6 days, Hashem created the heavens and the earth and all that's in the heavens of the earth. V'shavas b'yom hashvi. And then Shabbos came, the 7th day, and he rested. So it's a sign and a covenant for us to know that this is what happened. There were 6 days of creation, and that Hashem rested on the 7th day. That is what Shabbos is. It's a day that we should know what happened by creation. Just like we have other commandments that we do as a remembrance, as a testimony of something that happened to us. For example, the holidays. The holiday of Passover, we celebrate to remember the Exodus of Egypt. So too Shabbos, we celebrate to remember. It's a testimony of what happened in the beginning of creation. At the 7th day of creation, Hashem rested. V'hi yesod ha'amunah, and this is one of the foundations of our belief that there's the day of Shabbos. V'amru Rabbeinu Zal, And our rabbi said, Shkula Shabbos kechol ha-mitzvahs. Shabbos is equal to all the mitzvahs. Kol ha-mishaber es ha-Shabbos kol chasai, kil makayim kol ha-Torah kula. Anyone who keeps Shabbos according to its laws, it's as if he fulfills the entire Torah. B'chol ha-mechalo es ha-Shabbos, ki'ilu kafar b'chol ha-Torah kula. Anyone who desecrates the Shabbos, it's as if he desecrates the whole Torah. V'chein hu omer be'ezra, l'har sina yiradita, v'titein la'amcha Torah u'mitzvahs, v'Shabbos kachcha haidaitelem. And we see that Shabbos is equivalent to the whole Torah in the book of Ezra, that it says that it came down on Har Sinai, and you gave to your nation Torah mitzvahs, and the holy Shabbos you may know to them. That's halacha aleph, the first subsection. Moving on to subsection 2, which is going to continue speaking about the greatness of Shabbos. V'chol ha-mechalo Shabbos b'farhesya hareu ka'ovid k'chaven l'chol dvarav. Anyone who desecrates Shabbos in public, it's as if he is an idolater in all matters. So what does this mean? So it's going to play out, there's going to be certain ramifications of what is caused through this. If a person would touch wine, the wine would become forbidden to drink. V'pashu eife heavy pas ovid k'chaven. And bread that would be baked by such a person would be considered bread baked by a Gentile, which there's certain laws about that bread baked by a Gentile. It's permissible to eat, but it's not the same, doesn't have the same standard of bread baked by a Jew. So too, food that such a person would cook would be considered food cooked by a Gentile. So those are the different factors that would happen if a person desecrates Shabbos. Now, when is it considered desecrating Shabbos in public? In public means if it was done in the presence of 10 Yisrael, 10 Jews. And it's not specifically that it was done in their presence, but even if it's just known to 10 Jews that the transgression was done. Gabi va Esther b'fahesya havi v'chein kasav ha'prima gadim pirsum havi asara mi Yisrael oy sheyida sheis parsim. This idea that to be considered it was done in public is even when it's not in the presence of 10, but just that 10 know about it, it's obvious from the fact of the story of Esther, that it says in the Talmud that Esther had relations with Achashverosh was public knowledge, although it wasn't in the presence of 10, just that 10 people knew about it. So we see that something being done in public is either that it was in front of 10 Jews or that 10 Jews know about it. Okay, we'll move on to halacha 3. This halacha is going to continue speaking about how the greatness of Shabbos, and because of the greatness of Shabbos, there's a great reward. And it's going to let us know the great reward there is for keeping Shabbos and keeping Shabbos, honoring Shabbos, and having pleasure and making Shabbos a pleasurable time.
Yossi, can you like summarize like the first two laws that we learned, and also like explain a little more about the reason why a person is not allowed to have wine for, that's touched by a non-Jew, and how that, the idea that if a person transgresses Shabbos, they would fall into the same category. Maybe expound on it a little, explain it a little more. So if you could summarize the laws that we just learned, it's just a little fast for me.
Okay.
Thanks.
So to summarize, we'll first summarize the laws in the first halacha, and then we'll go on to, we'll expound on the second halacha. So in the first halacha, we see that why do we have Shabbos? It's because Shabbos is a day that was given to us to know that Hashem created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh day. And the day of Shabbos is such a great mitzvah that it's equivalent to all mitzvahs. That's the summary of the first halacha. Now in halacha 2, well, we spoke about that if it brings down the law of wine touched by a non-Jew is forbidden. So what's the reason why wine touched by a non-Jew is? So let's first talk about why is wine that a non-Jew touched, why is it forbidden? So wine touched by someone that by idolater is forbidden because we're worried that maybe the wine was used for idolatry. So that's the first step. So, and if idolatry if someone that worships idol worshiper touches someone that worships other God besides Hashem touches wine, we say the why it's forbidden because we're worried perhaps that idolater touched the wine, was using the wine for his idolatry. Then this law of touching wine went further and said it was even for any non-Jew. And if I remember correctly, I believe the reason is, so we don't have wine touched by a non-Jew is because we're worried that it might lead to intermarriage. And if we would receive wine from a non-Jew, it might cause us to come close to a non-Jew, which if wine being a very special drink, very, very special, a special drink, it's something that a person will feel good by receiving the wine. And because of this, we decided that any wine from a non-Jew a person should not have any wine from a non-Jew. So that's about wine. Bread. The same as with bread and cooked food. We're worried that it could lead into intermarriage. We don't have. It's bread from a non-Jew. There are some authorities that hold it's better not to, but it's permissible, and so too, food cooked by a non-Jew. It's not outright, it's not forbidden. There are those that have the standard not to have them. And so we're letting you know that if a Jew that desecrates Shabbos in public, and just to add, it's that he knows about the laws of Shabbos and still desecrates it, and he does it deliberately, then these laws would apply to such a person, that it would be forbidden. The wine that he touched would become forbidden. The food that he baked would be considered a food baked by a non-Jew, and also the bread that he baked would be considered bread baked by a non-Jew, and also the food that he cooked would be considered food cooked by a non-Jew.
So I would just like to mention that one of the biggest problems that the kosher industry has is that all of these companies have non-Jews turning on the fires, doing all the manufacturing. And so all the kosher agencies have to deal with that issue because number one, of course, the rabbis pop in to make sure all the ingredients are kosher, but really, not only do they have to see that the ingredients are kosher, according to Jewish law, if a non-Jew cooks something that's considered, an honorable food, like let's say a piece of fish or a piece of meat or chicken, or cook something that's considered a respectable type of food, that would be prohibited for any Jew to eat. So the rabbis of these kosher agencies, they have different methods of how they cause the actual food to be considered cooked by a Jew. There are technical ways of having it cooked by a Jew, and the goal is that people should ultimately help the intermarriage problem, because in the olden days you would go over to your next door neighbor's house, and even though you were eating something kosher in their house, but your next door neighbor wasn't Jewish, and then you got very friendly with them, and then sure enough, 5 years down the line, your daughter is going out with their son, and then that's the end of all your nachas, or at least some of your nachas. So in order to help people out from their from this issue of intermarriage, one of the methods that was used was if you never really drank wine, at a non-Jew's house, or you never ate food, it would minimize your close relationship that could ultimately lead into intermarriage. So that's just an interesting thought. So one of the methods that the rabbis of the kosher agencies use is that they turn on the fire and they leave it on. And a lot of these companies have the fire on 24/7 simply because it should be considered that the Jew cooked the food, and it would not fall into the category of food not cooked, food cooked by a non-Jew. It shouldn't fall into that category. Of course, this doesn't apply to everything. Like, for example, foods that are eaten raw, do not have to be cooked by a Jew. The food that's not fit to be eaten on a king's table doesn't fall into this category. It's considered only respectable food. The same thing applies to bread. Really, bread initially was part of the same. There was also a rule about bread cooked by a non-Jew. However, bread is considered a food item that's a staple food, and therefore the rabbis removed the full obligation. Of course, most people that live in big cities that have kosher bread cooked by a Jew, of course, you wouldn't go and buy bread cooked by a non-Jew. But if you have no other choice, bread cooked by a non-Jew would be permissible, except between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's mentioned in the Code of Law. Person should be extra careful between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur not to eat food baked, not to eat bread, specifically bread. Even though it's a staple food, person should try extra, not to eat bread. Anyway, just thought I would mention that just so people have an understanding of these side ideas that are being brought up. And even though we're talking about the laws of Shabbos, thought maybe people might want to know about what, how are we fulfilling that if we're eating food cooked by these big companies? So I just wanted to answer that question.
Rabbi Smith, I have a ditty. I think we can remember was taught to me by my Rav, that wine leads to socialization, which in turn leads to fraternization, which in turn leads to sororitization, which in turn leads to intermarriage.
Thank you for clarifying, but Rabbi Yossi is, okay, Rabbi Yossi, it's all yours.
So before we go on to subsection 3, halacha 3, there's a note. I'm not sure, whoever has the same Shulchan Aruch as mine, they could see inside. Note on page 4, note 1. So this note lets us know a little bit more about a person that desecrates Shabbos in public. We have a very it says Ramosha Feinstein in Igros Moshe explains that today the fact that a person violates the Shabbos, does not necessarily cause him to be designated as an apostate. Such a person can be given an aliyah and can be counted in a minyan, and any other honors in the synagogue. Nevertheless, the ones mentioned in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch still apply. Okay, let's move on to, let's give a summary to the second halacha. The second halacha tells us about the desecrating Shabbos. And if someone desecrates Shabbos in public, as I mentioned, and this is that he knows about the laws of Shabbos and does it deliberately, then the wine that he touches becomes forbidden. Likewise, and the bread and food that he cooks, which, as Rabbi Smith explained, certain foods are this only applies to certain foods that aren't eaten raw, and that they are foods that would go on a king's table. So those type of foods, they would be considered cooked by a non-Jew. And what is considered in public, it's in front or known by 10 people. Halacha Gimel. So because this is so about Shabbos, the Fichach Meshabeach Hanavi ve'omer. Therefore, the prophet Yeshaya says about Shabbos, Ashri Enosh Yaseh Zeis. Fortunate is a man who does this. Uven Adam Yachzik ba. And a person who grasps in it. Shemer Shabbos Mechaluloi. What is he doing and what is he grasping? He watches, he keeps Shabbos and makes sure not to desecrate Shabbos. That's the pasuk. That's the verse in Yeshaya. Now, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch goes on. V'chol hashemer as a Shabbos kilchasai umechabdai umeangai kafi kaichai. Any person who keeps Shabbos according to its laws, honors Shabbos, and takes pleasure in Shabbos according to a person's capabilities. Gam ke mefayresh al pi hanavi. The prophet Yeshaya also states, Schare gam ba'olam hazeh. He'll have a reward in this world. Chutz min haschar harav hatzafun lo'olam haba. Besides the fact that he's going to get a great abundance of reward is going to be stored for him in the world to come. So how do we know that you'll get such a reward. Shenemar, because it states in Yeshaya, in Tashem Meshabes Raglacha, Osis Chavtzecha B'Yem Kachi, V'Karasa L'Shabes Einig L'Kacha Hashem Mechubad. If you rest, if on Shabbos you restrain your foot from doing your desires, on my holy day, on the day of Shabbos, which is my holy day, and you call it a day of pleasure to the holy God and honor, and you honor Shabbos from refraining from doing your own activities and from pursuing your affairs and from speaking mundane talks. So if you do that on Shabbos, O tisani gal Hashem v'chavticha abimasi eretz v'chalticha nachlas Yaakov avicha Yipi Hashem diber. So if you keep Shabbos in that way, you'll have pleasure in Hashem, and you will ride on the high places of the earth, and you'll nourish the inheritance of Yaakov, the patriarch, because this is what the word of the mouth of Hashem said. So this halacha, in short, tells us the great reward there is for a person that does. There's three things on Shabbos mentioned. There's keeping Shabbos, guarding the laws, the things that are guarding to make sure not to do what's forbidden to be done on Shabbos, which there's going to be a great length of talk about that. Then there's honoring Shabbos and having pleasure on the day of Shabbos. So a person that makes sure to do these three things, guard from doing forbidden things on Shabbos, honoring Shabbos, and taking pleasure on Shabbos, they'll have a great reward. They'll as it goes up, as we see from the prophet of Yeshaya. And it mentions also what are the. It mentions that there's when it speaks about refraining on Shabbos, it mentions both in action and also in speech. So there's laws about how a person what actions a person should do on Shabbos, and there's also laws about what the speech a person should be on Shabbos. It shouldn't be about mundane things. That will be discussed. All these laws will be discussed later on in the summary of the Code of Jewish Law. Any questions before we go on? All right. Now, so that's the end of
Rabbi, I thought you were Rabbi Smith or Rabbi Moshe. Who are you?
Rabbi Lifshitz.
Oh, Lifshitz. Yeah, because someone called you before Rabbi Smith. I see it's not his voice. Thank you, sorry.
So now, after speaking about the greatness of Shabbos, we're going to talk about preparations for Shabbos. In the Ten Commandments, it says, remember the day of Shabbos. What do you think? What is the Torah coming to tell us when it says, remember the day of Shabbos? If the Torah wants to tell us that we should keep the day of Shabbos, it would write the Hebrew word shamar. Keep the day of Shabbos. In truth, there's two sections that the Torah has on Shabbos there's two sections in the Torah on Shabbos, where it's the 10 Commandments are written. One of the places it mentions keep the day of Shabbos, the holy day of Shabbos. And then in the other time, the other section of Torah that has the 10 Commandments, it says, remember the holy day of Shabbos. Why would the Torah tell us remember the day of Shabbos if the Torah wants us to keep the day of Shabbos? There has to be something more that the Torah is telling us besides just keeping the laws of Shabbos. So we're going to see over here in this halacha what there's going to be an explanation. What does it mean, remember the day of Shabbos? Does anyone want to share what their thoughts are? What does the Torah mean when it says remember the day of Shabbos?
Maybe it's to remember Hashem and all of his creation, something having to do with that. And that if God, also, as you mentioned, God's energies are different on Shabbos towards us.
To remember so in other words, to remember every day that we have a holy day, we have the holy day Shabbos. Yeah, that's a good point. Here, let's see what it's going to say over here in how they're going to explain the idea of remembering Shabbos. Subsection 4, Halacha Daled. Ksiv Zocher Shem HaShabbos L'Kadsha. It's written, remember the holy day of Shabbos. Pirish. This means Sheyizker b'chol yom v'yom es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsha. Remember every day the holy day of Shabbos. Remember every day the day of Shabbos to make it holy. Every day, not just Shabbos know about Shabbos, but every day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, each day of the week, remember Shabbos. And when you remember Shabbos, remember in a way that will make it holy. What does this mean? That if a person finds a special food that's not regularly available, and this food is something that will remain good, it won't get ruined. If he waits until Shabbos to have it, then what a person should do is yakneu lekavod Shabbos. He should buy this special food in honor of Shabbos. So during the week he's remembering Shabbos. He has to buy if he finds something nice, a special food, he's going to buy it and say this is going to be for Shabbos. So that's the explanation of remember Shabbos every day. That could just happen on Sunday a person finds a special, a food that's special, that's not regularly available for him. So the Torah says a good thing to do is to buy, so we learn out a good thing to do is to buy it in honor of Shabbos. Just want to add that in these next subsections from subsection 4 until through 7, these are going to be good things to do. It's not saying that it's prohibited if a person doesn't do that. It's prohibited not to do this. It's saying these are things that you should try to, that they're good things that you should try to do. Uve'erev Shabbos, mitzvah sheyashkem b'boker liknos tzarchei Shabbos. And Friday, it's a mitzvah that a person should rise early and buy what's his Shabbos needs, the things that he needs for Shabbos. He's able to go out and buy the things he needs for Shabbos, even before he does his morning prayers. Shachrit, before he davens Shachris. Provided he doesn't delay through this by going out and buying his needs for Shabbos, he doesn't delay davening with the minyan. And it's better to buy the things that you need for Shabbos on Friday than to buy them on Thursday. But however, something that needs to be prepared, and he needs time to prepare it, he should buy it on Thursday, so he'll be able to prepare it before Shabbos. Well, on everything that he buys for Shabbos, he says, "Hey, this is for the honor of Shabbos, the covet Shabbos." Mitakanas Ezra, Shiu Mechabsin Habigodim B'Chamishi B'Shabbos, the covet Shabbos. Ezra enacted that a person should do laundry on Thursday in honor of Shabbos. He shouldn't wait till Friday to do laundry, but rather he should do it on Thursday. V'loi b'erev Shabbos, not on Friday. Mipnei shebe'erev Shabbos tzarich lis'asik b'tzarich Shabbos. Because, as we all know, Friday is a busy day preparing for Shabbos. So since that there's other needs that you have to be busy with, you shouldn't do laundry on Friday since you're already busy with your other Shabbos needs. So I just want to point out that this that we say it's better to buy on Friday than Thursday, it's a little different these days. And it depends also what you're buying. These days there's a lot of things that are able to last for longer, stay fresh and stay good. And also it depends what you're buying. If it's something that's, if you buy a lot of the grocery shopping, let's say a lot of the grocery shopping are things that are either they're non-perishables or they're able to be kept in the fridge or freezer, and it's not a difference one day, or if you're going to have it, you bought it today, you bought it yesterday, you bought it 2 days ago. So things like that, like even things you put in the freezer, you put chicken or fish, they don't start going bad, or they're not any worse one day or another day or even a few days. So it would be fine to get it. There wouldn't be any preference in regards to that. It wouldn't be a preference to get it specifically on Friday. So that you don't have that worry of things going bad. Now there are still foods that are they're better if you buy them closer to the time that you're going to eat them. You're going to, let's say you buy ready-made food, ready-made schnitzel or burekas or ready-made takeout food. I'll be better on Friday than on Thursday. So it would be a better thing to get it on Friday. So that's regards to buying things on Friday and Thursday, how it's also these days. Also, another thing that came to mind is, let's say you want to get flowers. When's a good time to buy flowers? So if it works out, if you're going to get flowers, it would be a good day of the week to do it would be Friday, according to this idea of that it should be nice things on Shabbos. You should have nice things on Shabbos. Rather than getting it a different day of the week, if it would be better to get it on Friday. Also, laundry. Laundry these days is a little bit different process than it was centuries ago. It's the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch was written in the year 1864, almost over 150 years ago, and a lot of it's just a summary of the Code of Jewish Law, which was written over 400 years ago. So back in the day, it would be much more of a process to do laundry. Nowadays, to do laundry is much, depending on how it is. For some people, just some things are not as much of a large of a task as it's not as the same large of a task as it used to be. It could still, if a person's able to do it a different day, it still seems like it could be better to do it on not Friday and spend time spend time Friday doing other things. Especially nowadays. Nowadays we don't wear, the reason why it's mentioned to do laundry Thursday is you want to have fresh clothing on Shabbos, and they would just wear the same clothing the whole week. Nowadays, we don't just wear this. We have a lot of clothing, so we could have fresh clothing even if you did laundry much earlier in the week. Still have fresh clothing on for Shabbos. So even doing it Thursday is not so necessary nowadays, because you could do the laundry earlier in the week on a Sunday or Monday or any day of the week, and you'll still have fresh clothing for Shabbos. So now let's make a summary of this halacha. And this halacha tells us that a person should, if he encounters special food, he should save it, he should buy it and have it for Shabbos, to honor Shabbos. Then there's a person should be quick and rise to buy a Shabbos food to show, because that's the way that's honoring Shabbos, by doing it early, doing it and going right away to do it. Then a person should buy his things on Friday for Shabbos. And as I mentioned, it depends on it. It's not necessary if it's things that are, you could buy things before Friday if they're going to be just as good as if buying them earlier doesn't make them less fresh on Shabbos. And a person should better not to do laundry on Friday to be involved in other preparations for Shabbos. Okay, move on. Well, we have just a couple minutes left. Does anyone have any questions?
I always buy the good food, always thinking about Shabbat, even if it's Monday. If I see a good fish, I buy it. Sorry,
That's
sorry, Rabbi, I was eating something.
okay. Well, one more subsection, or yeah, squeeze in one more subsection. Mitzvah kol adam she'af al pi sheyesh lo kama misharsim mikol makom yaseh gam hu ba'atzmei eze davar lekavod Shabbos. It's a mitzvah for everyone, even though a person can have a lot of servants. He should still do himself something to honor Shabbos. Kitamitzina b'amarayim Rav Chisda haya mechatich aserer dak dak. Now we're going to find different rabbis did things special for Shabbos. Rav Chisda would cut vegetables into small slices. Rabbi Rav Yesa haya mevakin eitzim. Zera haya madlik as a eish. Rav Nachman haya mesakin as a bias. So Rav Yosef would chop wood would chop trees for firewood. Rav Zera would light a fire. Rav Nachman would tidy the house. Umachnas kelim atzrich on the Shabbos. Umefanda kliachol. He would bring in the utensils that were used for Shabbos, and he would take away the utensils that were used during the week. Umehem yomat kol adam v'lo yemer lo efkein b'chved kizeu kvedai shemechaved es Shabbos. So this is a very important line. A person should learn from these rabbis that shouldn't say that preparing for Shabbos is below my dignity, because this is a person's honor to honor Shabbos. So in short, this law is telling us that a person should try to do. Maybe we'll touch up more next week. Do some preparation to do anything to prepare for Shabbos in order to, because this is to show his honor to Shabbos.